Hello and welcome to the lunch keynote. I hope you're having a fantastic day here at the virtual SecureWorld Mid-Atlantic. And if we haven't had a chance to cross paths yet, my name is Bruce Sussman. I'm Director of Content and one of your several hosts that we have on the platform today. Now, I'm really excited about the fact that today is designed to be as interactive as possible. So for our keynote presenters here at lunch, if you've got questions for them, please use the text chat box. And if you're like me, you appreciate numbered lists. Anybody else out there who likes those? Like top 5 things to do around whatever it is, right? Well, in this case, in the lunch keynote, we're talking about correcting the top 5 weaknesses in your cloud security posture. And that is something that is so timely, especially given all the digital transformation we've undergone quickly, right, during the last year. It's a tag team presentation with Michael Lopez from AccessIT Group, and Grant Asplund is here from Checkpoint Software Technologies. So, gentlemen, it's exciting to have both of you on the virtual SecureWorld stage. And Grant, I think you're kicking it off, so take it away.
Hi, everyone. Thank you very much. It's great to have you here. I'm really jazzed about the opportunity to present today because it's just not me. It's with someone that I have just the utmost respect and admiration for. The guy's a big brain when it comes to cloud, man. And they're just an outstanding partner of ours. I've known Mike for a while. He's been on my podcast. I can tell you, man, the guy really, really knows cloud well. I've heard that from other people and have experienced it myself. And we're going to talk to you about this whole thing called posture in the cloud, right, Mike?
That's correct.
So just so everybody can see that, both Mike and I know how to put on a sport coat. Now, Mike, why don't you tell them a little bit about you and your background?
All right. Well, thanks. So it's always a pleasure to be here with you. And as Grant says, we've done this together. We've worked together before, so it's always a privilege and an honor to be here with Grant. Myself, I've been in cloud since cloud started. Actually, the first year that Amazon launched this thing called AWS, Amazon Web Services, had a need to rapidly expand, scale, and build a application that could hold up across multiple time zones, multiple data centers. And it occurred to us that that would be the best solution. I wish I could tell you I was a visionary and I knew that that was the future and that was where the world was going to be today as we talk. Truth of the matter was we were broke and we couldn't afford to buy the servers fast enough to rack and stack them as fast as we were selling them. And we found the ease and the ability to use code and deploy our servers so fast that, well, from there, we've learned to secure it. We've learned to use the way the cloud's grown, to use the native tools, to use third-party tools, how to access and augment different security controls, whether we're integrating with SSO or whether we're grabbing third-party NVAs and firewalls, or whether we're having to do different things and take advantage of the natives offerings, the PaaS offerings, the RDSs of the world. And it's become just a phenomenal experience for me over the last 12 years in working with cloud. And today, I serve as the director of cloud services, and it's my responsibility to make sure that our clients have a secure cloud environment. And so my team is a crackpot team. We've all been working in cloud for double-digit years. We're rapidly growing, which, as you might well guess, cloud is getting to be a very, very big word these days. And we specialize in the security of the cloud itself.
Well, Mike, the growth of the cloud it's been extraordinary, but it also, I think, has really put tremendous strain on our customers because it's almost moving too fast for them to really be able to adapt and still maintain their own business. And it's really made managing cloud much more challenging because it is really different, isn't it?
Well, it's definitely different. And, the cool part about the way the cloud has come about and the different offerings is that we're getting new shiny things to touch and play with. And there's a new way to do it every 3 months. And if you're like me, I get really distracted. There goes a squirrel. That's the new way to do it. Let's go try it. Now, the problem with that is that oftentimes you just got to figure out how it works and you don't understand the security implications. And by the time the security team realizes what the dev team's done, it's already in production. So yeah, there's a lot of different things that go on that we have to be concerned about.
And I've read recently, Mike, some 93% of enterprises are actually using multi-cloud, not just one, but multiple cloud. And as the slide talks about, there's this shift where IT is kind of no longer the purveyor, controller exclusively of applications, because the way things are shifting left. Isn't that happening?
No, absolutely. And even the networking portions of it, or IT in and of itself, is becoming a service. We hear infrastructure as a service, we hear network as a service, we hear software as a service, but it's really becoming IT as a service. It's a way to deploy your entire organization, handle anything that could possibly be needed without budgetary concerns. We're not having to plan, bring hardware and rack stack. Do we have space in the data center? Which data center is going to take care of it? Oh, wait a minute, we need a cross connect. All these thoughts are gone. They're there for us. It's just a matter of a few clicks, or a couple of kilobits of a text file, and we can launch an application to be up and running.
It's amazing. And I think what it complicates is, because things are so complex. And I was I did a webinar earlier with Aviatrix, and just talking about the complexities of some of the routing when you're using a VPC and a VNet and on-prem, and you're trying to pull all that stuff together. It's not for the faint of heart. And I think that it's because of the complexity, combined with what you mentioned, new stuff coming out so fast, it really ends up elevating the consequences of poor behavior in the cloud. Isn't that right?
Well, yeah, absolutely. And it's funny, I obviously have done a lot of training in my career and teaching people. And I came from route switch, that's how a lot of us came up in this industry in IT. And so I'm pretty good with BGP. I understand the concepts. I've built global WAN networks. Well, when we start getting into how routing works in AWS or Azure or GCP, well, all three are different. Let's start with that, which is the first problem. But the second problem is the best advice I've been able to give any student that came from route switch is forget everything you know about routing. As long as you can subnet, you'll be okay in the cloud, because all the routing's taken care of for you. That's how it seems to work these days. And it does frustrate phenomenal CCIE with some of the smartest routing guys. They get in there like, this doesn't make any sense. I'm like, I agree, but this is how it works now.
Yeah. Well, your point, I think, the word I often use when I'm talking with people is, we need to unlearn.
Yeah.
And that's literally a process that we have to go through as we move into the cloud. And if we don't, we end up making catastrophic mistakes. And that's certainly around the world of posture management. And I want to hold on that one and move on through the rest of this slide on some of the other clear areas that people make common mistakes. And I want to just build these out, and then we can talk about each one of them. This one is the last one that comes in. Mike, this is the Captain Obvious one, right? Oh, and unknown malicious traffic. Duh. But when you go back and you look at some of these other threats, risks, vulnerabilities, areas of concern, they're not always top of mind for our customers, right?
No, and unfortunately they're not. We can go around the horn here, right? Obviously misconfiguration, we know that's 99.7% of the reason for a breach in the cloud. Everybody's talked about that. This is not a new concept. We're all aware of it.
Yep. And we're going to talk more about it in a minute.
Well, we will, of course. But then you talk about vulnerable serverless functions at runtime. Serverless applications are great. I really love them. I love what it does. It takes the infrastructure away. It simplifies things to do. However, once we've taken that away, what are you doing for your code? Are you sure your code's secure? Are you not calling an API of something else that may be insecure? What are you doing to secure that workload? And those tend to get forgotten. When it's on premise, it's a little different. There's roadblocks to that. There's code scanning. And if that's not being done in a serverless environment, you're leaving yourself very risky, especially because if you look, a Lambda function assumes a role and it can escalate privileges often, taking us right into stolen credentials or escalated privileges.
Yep.
You know, when we get into something that beats the front end on a serverless application that can assume roles, now all of a sudden you got the keys to the castle depending on how they're privileged. And that happens a lot, unfortunately. And we
this
see
next
this
one, it's almost
consistently.
like everybody knows this, right? I mean, despite the fact that everybody seemingly continues to make the mistake of opening the window, export is open, or just totally configuring improperly a bucket without any encryption.
Well, you know, well, not only encryption, but wide open, right? That combination. You know, AWS finally changed the default on their S3 buckets to not be public. So by default, they're not public. You have to say, okay, great. So that's one less possible misconfiguration.
Right.
That's not true with blob storage. You have to tell it what it is. And if you're not encrypting your storage, well, now we've got bigger problems. Obviously, wide open to the world. Unfortunately, we're still seeing this. You know, and Amazon's made some changes with the way they have bucket access policies instead of using ACLs like they formerly were. ACLs still work, but they're deprecated. By using a bucket access control policy, you can restrict what can get there. I can't tell you how many of these I see, and I mean, it's in the 90 to 95th percentile that do not have a bucket access policy. It's just, anything in my account can reach it. That's scary.
It is. It is. Unsegmented workloads, you know, that's, people have to really understand and appreciate how critical segmentation, microsegmentation is in the cloud. Isn't that true?
Well, it is. And, you know, we all came from the data center world where you couldn't have a firewall on every VLAN. You knew that. It was just not cost effective. It's not manageable. It doesn't make sense. But when you have the ability to quite literally block traffic at your NIC, whether it be on a VM, whether it be at the network level with the network ACL, you have such a great power to segment your workloads to prevent lateral spread from a threat. When we talk about just that alone, but when we segment our prod dev, kind of a big deal, right? People get a little loose in dev. We all know that. You hate to see it, but it happens.
Yeah.
The other concern is the front ends. The front ends are always vulnerable. But if we have good segmentation, we can prevent the crown jewels, the application, the databases, even if the front end is compromised.
Yep. Yeah. It's like you keep it from rolling too far, right? I mean,
Stop the avalanche.
If it starts to roll down the hill, okay, but it's not going to roll down and then take out the town below.
Right. Yeah. It's only going to get one or two at the very least. And that segmentation matters. But we weren't used to being able to do that in a data center.
Yeah.
And so it's a new, and while cloud is not new, it's still a new concept to a lot of people moving their workloads out there, especially on lift and shift.
Yeah. And what about, you know, we've all known the shift to encrypted traffic anytime it's going, you know, north-south, but it seems like that now, I mean, shouldn't we just pretty much encrypt everything? I mean, shouldn't just about all traffic be encrypted at all times?
Well, absolutely. And some of the great advancements that the providers are making, like AWS with the port mirroring, that's fantastic. There's a lot of neat things you can do with that port mirroring now, from threat detection and response, and you get a lot better data. You can see what's going on. But if you're not encrypting that traffic, that means somebody else can do it too. And if you're sending data that's unencrypted, it's really easy to grab it. So if you know how to sniff for traffic, okay. We're not in a position to where we have physical controls on our data center, or we have, you know, that benefit. We're going to see these sniffs. We're going to see these attacks. And as easy it is to encrypt this traffic east-west and to encrypt the data in and of itself in between. Yep. There's no reason not to.
Yep. Yep. Exactly. So just one of the things that I often will hold up is this specific slide. In fact, what do you know? I have it right here. And I always say, you know, we pay the Gartner tax, and so I can reference it. But clear as day, Mike, that very first foundational layer to that pyramid, the broadest, most critical component they state is continuous cloud security posture management. And it's amazing to me how people still are not really understanding how critical posture management is. Maybe just take a second and make sure that people understand how broad posture management is, because it's not just if your S3 buckets not exposed to the internet. You know what I mean? I mean,
No, of course.
there's a lot to posture management.
Well, and just scratching the surface on posture management, when we talk about what encryptions, right? Is this particular VM encrypted? Is the storage encrypted on it? Yes or no? Okay, that's good to know. Well, if it says that it's a database in the server name, I'm going to guess you probably meant to have that encrypted. Simple things like that. You know, we'll start there, like with the infrastructure configuration. They talk about network storage compute paths. I can't tell you how many times through our managed service that we go in and I look at the ongoing reports. We have, you know, meetings with our customers to evaluate their posture and help them get better as a part of the managed service. And the past services jump out at me constantly. SQL as a service is great. And if you're in Azure and you're spinning up SQL servers as a VM, I don't know why. You've got the best guys in the world managing the Microsoft SaaS application for that. Why would you want the overhead? So people are taking advantage of it. It's a phenomenal product. But then when you have a security group that allows quad zero on all ports, you just open the crown. Here's the jewels. By the way, here's the roadmap, and we'll go ahead and just leave the drawbridge down for you. It's okay. And I find it constantly. The same thing is true with the storage. I see this happen in storage where nothing's encrypted. Why? Is it because somebody forgot? You know, you hate to think that.
I think sometimes, and I think that I know I'm guilty of this, and you may be too, right? We're in this biz. We've been in this biz. We talk about this biz all the time, over and over and over. Get kind of myopic on all of the things that people should do. Where, you know, pick a household name that makes something else not cybersecurity or provide cybersecurity services, especially in the last year, man. I mean, look, you all of a sudden got told to send every single employee home, and oh, by the way, continue to be productive, right? I mean, this forced digital transformation, nobody could focus on anything but how do I create a strategy for my business to survive in this forced environment, right? So I think sometimes, you know, I forget that I've been talking about this for 20 years, you know, like you, but that's not always the same case on the other side of the fence. But what I think it also really speaks to, Mike, is when you look at the level that cyber consumes our lives and business, and the pace at which the stuff we all should be using is changing. I think it is the perfect storm for me to say, you know, to hike up the white flag and say, I need help. I cave, right? I mean, I would think, I would think it's just so much better because it's gotten so difficult because it is so faceted, so specialized.
Well, it's true. I mean, especially with cloud and the way we look at it, we're in a special cyber in and of itself. As we look at security, it's a specialized portion of our field. Then we look at cloud, which we've already discussed is different, and the controls are different. Things you can do are different. And then you figure out, well, okay, this is somebody who is just learning cloud. Maybe they've been in it for a couple of years, and they're amazing at their job. They're phenomenal. They're learning new tech. They're doing great things. They're spinning up applications 3 times as fast. Everybody's excited. All of a sudden, something breaks. What happened? There's been a breach. We think, we don't know. How do we know? Well, where's your logging? Where's your visibility? Well, that's going to vary cloud to cloud. And if you don't have some sort of centralized logging point that can get you factual, good, actionable intelligence, how do you handle it? And that's one of the things I think, and it's here in the Gardener, and it's one of the things that, it's right there above that foundation from cloud security posture management. And a good tool brings that into that visibility, understanding what can talk to what, understanding how your logging is happening, being able to audit your controls so that you know what's going on, you know who's accessing your environment, you know the data flows. So if something does happen, you're prepared to track it. Oftentimes, most people don't understand what's what. We had a customer, we're doing the resize, we're helping them out with cost savings. Like, okay, hey, these things have been sitting here forever, we're gonna turn them off. They're like, well, we have no idea what they do. I was like, oh, okay, let me show you a trick. I'll show you what they're talking to. We pulled it in, we put our tool in place, looked at them, like, they're not talking to anything. There's no public IP on them. These are VMs sitting here doing literally nothing. They're like, oh, yeah, go ahead and turn them off. Sure enough, nobody complained. We turned them off and it worked out. They hadn't been touched in 3 years. They had been running. And I think it was an R series XX large. It was costing like $1,400 a month per machine. But if you can't see it, you don't know, right?
This is, you're hitting on something, Mike, I spoke earlier about. We all remember virtualization when it came about, right? I mean, everybody was so jazzed because, man, I've been at 6, 8, 11% utilization on my appliances. And now all of a sudden, boom, I could get up to, 50, 60%. I mean, really with reasonable overhead, right? I mean, it was awesome. But all of a sudden there was this thing called sprawl. There was this thing called vMotion, remember? Inter-VM communications. But I still had to have a card key to get into the ESX server. I mean, I still had to get into the data center, right? And now in this new world, you don't have a good visibility tool. I mean, dude, you think sprawl was bad back then. I mean, today it's like, Yogi Berra said it, man. It's deja vu all over again because, but it's exacerbated because I could go from anywhere on the planet if I have the credentials and spin up new accounts and leave skeletons like you were just describing, right?
But and the worst and best part all at the same time is following best practices. You are supposed to add accounts. You are supposed to segment. So by doing that, you're actually creating a more difficult visible environment for the guys in security that they don't know what dev teams are doing. They don't know why.
Yeah.
And if they didn't bother to tell them, hey, we're putting a new application in this new account, how do they know what's going on? How do they know how to protect it? That's why people are scared of the dark, because you can't see what's going on. If you can't see, you can't fight.
Right. It's so true. And it is the starting blocks of any solution from a security perspective, right? I mean, it really is. But before we, let's talk more maybe about the whole posture management, or maybe put another way, the lack thereof. Because I think, far and away, one of the most popular compromises was the Cap1 breach that was due to some poor posture, right?
Yeah. The misconfiguration on a WAF that was checked improperly, that had gone checked, anybody would have noticed it and been able to close it. But again, couldn't see it, didn't know about it, didn't know it happened. And of course, until it was too late, right? And that's what the investigations found later.
Is that, Mike, I'm just, is it because we're just entering in this whole new world of ways to interface and interact and configure and execute our infrastructures that people are moving too fast, jumping in too quick?
To some extent, yeah.
All the little boxes.
Sometimes, yeah. And let's think about it. Anytime you started doing something new, whether it was riding a bike or your first job, whatever that might have been, you probably made a few mistakes. It took you a little while to get really proficient at it. And you might have been really good. But I remember as a kid, I had been riding a bike for years and I still managed to crash a few times. You're still going to make mistakes. Things are going to happen. Heck, I still got the scars. It happens. Yeah. When we move so fast in the way, a 2-week sprint, right? Everybody's agile now. You have 2 weeks to get this done. Do you really have time to go back and check your work? Now, I'm a big fan is if you don't have time to do it right the first time, you definitely don't have time to go back and redo it. So I always try to preach it and push that security as far left as possible. Let's get it into the devs' hands. Let's let them see it. But again, speed does create mistakes. And the faster, the more deadly, right?
Yeah. Speed kills. Yeah. So let's maybe just step through these 6 steps, Mike, from your perspective. I know you guys offer a co-managed service, right? That really takes the burden off of me for this posture management, not completely. I mean, I'm a partner in this game, but you surely offer a great deal of comfort for me when I'm not familiar with this space and all the nuances in the cloud, right? Maybe you can walk through these 6 steps of posture management.
Yeah, and this is often very much like our onboarding for a customer, truthfully. You know, what I preach to our customers is literally what I practice. And so knowing what's there, right? Discovery. What do we have? Where is it? Why? And then understanding the current risks that are there associated with it. How close are we to, you know, being exposed everywhere? Or where are our databases sitting? How good is our segmentation? Hey, where are our design documents? And did we follow them, or have we totally just missed the boat and nobody actually knows how to troubleshoot this, right? Because oftentimes it's developed and turned over to an operational team. The operational team didn't know what the dev was saying. You know, so documentation really matters, in my opinion. Then when you get down to that and you understand where the risks might be and you understand what you have. We had an enterprise customer that they didn't even know they had the amount of accounts they had. Also figures out why they were spending so much money. But when we were able to do this discovery and then show them the risks, they had to take a big step back, right? And they had to stop and think, what do we do? So we had to create, and we worked with them for them to decide what their compliance framework was going to be, what was in scope, what wasn't. And they decided on a NIST framework for the large majority of their environment. Good framework, I like it. But they also have customer-facing things, so obviously that had to go PCI. So we helped that understand, all right, so this is where we want to be. This is our end state goal for compliance. All right, so we ran the assessments. And then, you know, you had to go through and there's a reason that something happened. And there is an open public S3 bucket because it's meant to be. It was actually designed that way. And okay, so we'll add that as an exclusion. That's an acceptable business risk. That was with intent. Right. And then it's okay, well, how often do we need to check this? Now, I use continuous compliance because things happen. Cloud's ephemeral. Things turn up and down all the time. And if you're doing cloud right, at least in my opinion, you're going to be spinning up and spinning down. You're going to see ephemeral processes. You're going to expand. You know, we just got through the end of a quarter, right? I guarantee you saw spend spike across people's because what happened? Everybody's starting to crunch numbers. What did you do? We're using the machine learning. We're using big data for that. That's where you want to do it, is in the cloud. But you're not going to leave those running for the next 2.5 months until you need to do it again for another quarter. No, of course not. So we did see that. So what's that mean? We have to have it constantly going. We have to have it constantly secure. So we want to do this. So my compliance runs literally every hour. And it just gives you, it knows where it's at. It sees what happened, what changed, what risks have been applied. Now, we can fire an alert immediately on high risk right away, so you know it came up. Soon as it finds it, it's going to tell you. You're not waiting a month. You're not waiting an hour. You're not, soon as it's detected, you know. You know, big fan of closing the door before it's left open.
Yeah.
But when we get into that true frequency and you integrate into process, you know, you get that executive level report where the CISO, C-level people, directors can take a look at the, what I call the pretty report.
Yep.
Here's where you're at last week. Here's where you're at this week. Here are the
trend
things
lines, etc.
Exactly. You know, here's how we're trending. You're seeing a spike in usage. We're seeing stuff come on the board, all unsecure. What team is working on this? Let's go coach them on how to do this correctly. And it gives you the opportunity to stop it early in the process. And I believe that coaching helps us work together better, right? We've always had that development security, you know, gap, right? To where you're the enemy because you're trying to slow them down. No, I want to make you better. I want to show you how to do this the right way. That's secure, but you can work at the speed of light. So we also have the ability to integrate that code. I think we jumped ahead here.
I thought it was a perfect segue to jump to what you're talking about is,
the weak spots.
that it is these common weak spots. This is where we can really, your services can really help me bolster these weak spots, right?
Well, absolutely. But I mean, this is really for any cloud security posture management tools should be able to, your visibility, again, we're back to that visibility statement. And yes, we can certainly help with that. But these are the things I would recommend to anybody. I don't care what tool you're using. I don't care who your privileged vendor is. I don't care what your position is on security. If you want security, you've got to know these things and you've got to be able to look for them.
Explain, Mike, explain the context you mean on, I mean, I'm not stupid. I can at least read it, but I want to hear it from you. 5 most common cloud security weak spots: outbound traffic. Explain what you mean by that.
So outbound traffic, I can't tell you how many security groups I find every time we do these onboardings and these reviews with customers. And again, this is all data. This is everything we're seeing constantly. This isn't, I didn't read this. I don't pay for Gartner, so I'm not getting it from them. This is what I'm actually seeing and what my team's seeing. We have security groups, for argument's sake, on AWS with wide open outbound traffic, quad zero, all services, all ports. It can go anywhere it wants to go. Well, that's not that big of a deal if it's on-prem because it's going to hit an egress firewall at some point. Okay, and the security team's not going to let everything go out, and so it works. It's not that big of a deal. However, if there's just an internet gateway in front of that device, what happens if it's been compromised? Command and control bots are starting to communicate. It can do anything at once, and you have no way of knowing it's happening. You've got to secure that outbound traffic. You have to understand where your servers are reaching out to. Not only do we talk about that just at that layer, but your application layer, right? We all know that we're relying on APIs in our code. We're calling a third-party API to get what we want or to load it in. It's a partner, it's a B2B relationship. We have a vendor relationship that we're going to pull it in and load it into our application. What happens if that's been compromised? What happens if that certificate has expired? Is this what's happening? Well, we have to have that outbound traffic knowledge. We should only allow that outbound traffic. And this isn't only me saying this. I will tell you that all the best practices, every cloud vendor, every security will tell you, restrict your outbound traffic to only what is necessary. Yeah. But we got used to it in a data center to where, security's got the edge, it's not a big deal.
My firewall take care of it.
Exactly, but that's not the case anymore.
Yeah, interesting. Visibility, I think we understand that. Let's talk a little bit more, just because I think we got about 10 minutes or so left, give or take. Overprivileged IAM, or role-based access controls. Why is that such a big deal in the cloud? I mean, is identity really that big of a deal? Wink,
Identity
wink.
is one of the biggest deals in the cloud, actually. Everything is done based upon identity. We've talked before about how IPs really are going away. We're using DNS in the cloud. That was one of our conversations. Same concept of identity. It's who can access what based upon their role, right? A role-based access on RBAC, or the IAM, their identity and access management. Who has privileges to do what? And I see just egregious mistakes when we look at these IAM configurations. You go and you look at it, and it's an account, and we have the non-prod and the prod account, and you go in there, and there's 17 different people allowed in there, and they all have star access. That means full control, by the way. And you look at it and you go, why? What are they doing that they need that type of access? Well, they're developers. Well, no kidding. What are they developing? Well, they need EC2, they need RDS, and they need security groups. Okay, then give them privileges to that. Do they need S3? Oh yeah, they probably need S3. Then let them use S3. Well, they need control to read and write. Okay, don't give them full control. And why? Because credentials get compromised. It happens. We all know it. Yep. How do you prevent that? So and the whoopsie, right? You went into the wrong account. You had too much control. You thought that was your box and you deleted it.
What's that called? The whoopsie?
That's the whoopsie, right? Everybody in this business is logged into the wrong box and typed the command at some point in time and went, uh-oh. I promise, it's happened.
So I have to apologize real quick. I was noticing when I was going through the most common cloud security weak spots that we had slides for each one. And so I was trying to jump ahead to the appropriate one. And of course, I picked the wrong one and really confused you.
I didn't even notice real quick. But yeah, visibility, I think is, we can jump right into that. That's okay.
Well, I think we talked a lot about it, but it's more the identity, the IAM world. I wanted to really pick it. Why is that such a big deal? I think, and I'm making a point because I think it's so enormous and so transformative. And I don't know that everybody really understands how significant it is.
Well, and it's not only just your users, right? And when we look at users, oftentimes we're taking a hybrid AD approach. We've taken our current AD, we've pushed it into the cloud, whether it be a managed Microsoft, whether it be hybrid, again, however we're doing it. And let's be serious, it probably should have been cleaned up before it happened, but it probably wasn't because there was a project deadline. And now all of a sudden we have global administrators that can do anything they want in AD. Well, they don't necessarily know that. But I tell you, every time I do an Active Directory check for overprivileged credentials, I find significant amounts of people that have been let go, should not have the privileges, should not be in cloud. Like, no, that guy's a server admin on-prem. He's not even allowed to touch Azure because of the way the migration works and not checking it off. Now, that's just one part of it. We're talking about users, we're talking about people with hands on keyboard,
Right.
That's just one aspect. The confusing, the challenging, the concerning aspect is you have to apply controls to your machines, to your functions, your logic apps, your Lambda controls. These things have the ability to respond. Your containers have the ability to call services and do things. What happens if somebody gets a control of your containers? What happens if they get in and they spin up a bunch of pods and go crypto mining? We've seen that attack. That's not a new attack, but it keeps happening. Why? Because we're not securing that identity. We are allowing machines to do more than we want them to. I feel like it's Terminator all over again.
It's true. We're going to see the Matrix movies become revived and modernized, because that's where we're getting, right? Functions, Lambda, infra as code. I mean, come on. So let's talk, quickly about storage and, some of the challenges there. And I want to just, again, we got 4 or 5 slides. I want to make sure we can fit it all in. I think it's going terrific though. So thank you.
Well, no, that's great. Storage. I mean, storage is awesome, in cloud, right? Get as much as you want. It's consumption. It is the perfect model for cloud. Well, but it's confusing too. Well, what's the difference between Azure file shares and blob storage? Well, one's a part of the other. Well, what do you mean? And how do we use blob storage for saving this, that? Or how are we managing our backups? And what's the difference between hot and cold storage? And what's the difference in pricing? And wait a minute, you're supposed to encrypt that? There's all these different conversations we have, and that's just the normal storage, right? That's what we think of S3 buckets, blob, glacier, these types of storage, hot, cold. But what we forget is that the disks themselves actually aren't disks, right? Just like our phones are really computers these days. Nobody makes a phone call anymore. They send a text, right? These VMs that are built are attached to a storage account. They are virtual disks in a storage account. Who has access to that storage account? Because if they have access to the storage account, they have access to your data. And that's where we forget that storage matters. And the complexity of the storage has to be understood. Sure, you can click a few buttons. It'll spin up a Windows machine. Cool, great, awesome. What did you do about it? How did you secure it? Because they're not built secure coming up.
Yep.
You wouldn't just stick a disk in your data center and run it, not harden the image. It's the same concept.
Right.
But bringing the teams up, efficiencies, those are all things you've got to do. Your team's got to understand different life cycle policies.
Yeah. So you mentioned encryption, and so it was a perfect segue to the failures. Maybe you can talk a little bit about encryption failures that you're seeing within your customers.
Well, we talked a little bit before about in transit, right? North, south, east, west. So, we've got that one pretty well covered. And let's be honest, IPsec's been around a long time. GRE's not that new. The cloud providers are actually starting to use new encryption methodology to help us. And it's not actually new, it's old, but they're using it to allow us to do a better job of securing our data in transit. Transit matters, right? That's why everything's HTTPS these days. Come on, let's be serious. But when we look at the encryption of our disks, of our storage, of our platforms, of our keys, how are we managing our keys? Encryption is great. But if you're using the built-in key management system, again, pick your cloud provider, doesn't matter, and a subpoena is sent to them for your data, they have the keys to unlock it and hand it over to whoever it might be, whether it's your rival that's suing you over something or whether it's your ex-wife. It doesn't matter. They can hand it over. If I'm a big believer in managing your own keys, I'm a big believer in bringing your key to the cloud. No different. I wouldn't want to leave the keys to my safety deposit box with the bank manager. I mean, he seems like a nice guy and all, but I don't know what he's going to do with the key. I'd rather keep my own key.
You know, I agree with you, but I think it's also, you know, it's that key management, that key rotation that's so critical that sometimes people, it's almost like, it's like, oh, this is a good long password, so I don't have to worry about changing it, right? People get lackadaisical and lazy, and that's really can be risky, right?
Right, but encryption always needs to be updated with whatever it is, whether it's your key management, whether it's your password, right? You change it often. And that's the way to go. Let your certificates expire in a year for a reason so that you have to change them and update them.
Exactly.
Yeah, key rotation, key management is something I see just poorly done, you know, in the cloud specifically, just because it's so easy. Oh, encrypt, use the built-in encryption and click the button. No, take a minute, do it right, at least in my opinion. But again, DevOps, speed of light, you got to work with it.
Well, segue is perfect because it's what we need to do. We're hearing it all the time. You know, I make jokes and say, you know, it is now the guy with the white tape in his glasses that's becoming the superhero, right? The nerds, because everything, all the power is moving into development. Everything is shifting left, but this to me is like where there's some of the biggest risks, because you're like moving so fast in cloud with some very inexperienced in terms of security drivers, right? I mean, these developers that are now wielding so much power on what they can spin up at the click of a button, but they don't always have the lens of security, the context, the view, the experience of security, and that can really be catastrophic, can't it?
Absolutely, but this is the perfect thing because we've seen this, right? We've learned this the hard way through all the publicized breaches. Every organization's seen this. It gets there too quick. Wait, it's not secure. Wait, we got to back it out. Now we've got an outage window. Nobody wants to take their public-facing website down. Nobody wants to slow down their revenue. But what you're seeing is the DevSecOps, and I'm really starting to see that become more and more important at these agile organizations. They want that security built into the code in the pipeline. CI/CD goes out. We have a hardened image. It's the only image we can call. This is our approved operating system. This is the only AMI you can use. It's already hardened. It's already preloaded. Here it goes. When it's called, here are the only things you can do with it. But they do that now. And now, you know, there's some great tools out there, even that are tied to some of the cloud security posture management, like in our service, for our managed service, we actually have the ability to give, because we like to coach the developers, that we give them access to the tool that allows them to run their code through this and see if it's secure or not before it goes out. It's going to flag that a security group is wide open. It's going to flag that you have no segmentation. And it's going to help coach developers as opposed and teach them, because that's what it's our responsibility to teach them and to coach them and to make them better so that they can continue to do what they do best and get us to this cloud at the speed of light.
Listen, I think you said it so spot on earlier, where if you don't have time to get it done right, you sure don't have time to go back and do it over again. So in this world where we need to move at the speed of cloud, it's absolutely imperative we put the right tools in the hands of these critical people. I'm concerned I don't want to go too far over on time, Mike. We need to kind of wrap it up. Top violations that we see out there. We've talked, I think, about a fair amount of these. The fact that everybody's not using MFA is really, it is shocking to me.
And it's amazing how often I see it, and it's out there. There's so many different services that are available. It's integrated into it. I couldn't even tell you how many authenticators have to come to my phone with all the clients that I work with. It's just normal. If somebody sets me up an account to help them and it doesn't require MFA, it does before I'll sign in because I'm not willing to let my credentials get exposed.
For the sake of time, Mike, why don't you take 30 seconds and bounce around this slide and hit each one of these and just make a couple of comments because I don't want to have to cut us off.
No, right. Storage open to the internet. We know anything open to the internet unintentionally is a bad idea. Open authentication, unrestricted access, we talked about. It's overprivileged roles. It gives too much access to it, whether it be your machine, your function, your human, your user, whatever it might be. Not rotating your keys. Come on, we all know better than that. Governance, huge problem. We have got to get a agreed upon standards that everybody can go from security to networking, down the row, all the way to devs, and everybody agree on, and that's how we work. And of course, we just hit on MFA. So
yeah, spot on. Listen, I love talking with you, Mike. I just always have a great time. We have great conversations. I hope I get you back on Talking Cloud again soon.
Let me know.
Definitely one of my most popular episodes for sure. So thanks a ton, man.
Appreciate you coming on with me today. Definitely appreciate the time. It's always a pleasure to work with you.
Yeah. Ladies and gentlemen, hopefully you found this time well spent. I know I speak on behalf of Checkpoint and AccessIT Group. We'd love to hear from you. Reach out to Mike or anybody on his team. They're the best, and we'd love to work with you. So thank you all very, very much.
Thanks, everybody.
Fantastic presentation, and really appreciate that top 5 list, which is so timely. And thank you again, Michael and Grant, for your time and sharing your expertise. Also, we really appreciate both Checkpoint and AccessIT for your support of this kind of digital collaboration. And if you want to continue the conversation that the keynote started, you can do so in the vendor pavilion, where you can find the AccessIT group and talk to those folks, and Checkpoint as well about questions you might have along the lines that Grant and Michael were talking about. Now, we're headed into a brief networking break, and then we have a fantastic afternoon of sessions planned. And don't miss the closing keynote later today on the resilient enterprise, right? And what we should be looking like as we push ahead. Adam Leisering, the CISO Paycor Group, will be the closing keynote. It's going to be fantastic. You don't want to miss that. So we'll see you again in a few minutes at the next session.